Get ready for a cloud-first workplace. Jumpstart your career by signing up for a Google Cloud hands-on learning experience. Companies around the world are moving to the cloud. This is a unique opportunity to gain new skills and professional credentials. If you want to discover a career, scale your startup, or perform groundbreaking research that will change the world, this is the event for you.
Hey, good evening, everybody. How is everyone doing? Ron, how are you?
Oh, I just finished my midterm exam about 1.5 hours ago, so I'm pretty happy and also scared to hear the results, but I'm pretty excited it's over.
Oh yeah. What was the exam
Yeah.
about? What was your exam?
Well, the thing is, I had 3 today, back to back. So a computer networking class, then after that a database systems class, and after that a machine learning class. I took these electives and all of them on the same day. It's pretty stressful.
Wow. Okay. Hopefully, you did really well. So
Yeah,
don't
just
ask any tough questions from Rohan today. So before I hand it over to Rohan, I quickly want to walk you all through something. So we set up a Discord server. Let me put the link up again so you all can see. It was very simple. So once you join the Discord server, you'll get prompted with the welcome page. I even have like a walkthrough video there, and then you'll see the rules page. Once you click here and the green check mark, agreeing to all the rules, you'll get invited into all the other channels will be unlocked. Now today, the special channel you need to focus on is the Flutter series. And if you happen to get stuck and if you want to get one-on-one support, you just go there, start putting your question in. And everybody on the right over here who's listed as a tutor, some of them might be able to jump and help. And then let's say you don't want to keep typing this text and you still want to share your screen and get one-on-one help, you can quickly jump into the Q&A lobby 1. Now we do have if you go to lobby 1, Dalton is already there. You can share the screen, you can turn on your microphone and the camera if you want, and get some one-on-one help, and he'll be able to help it. So for some reason, if you don't see anybody there, go back to the series channel, mention one of the tutors there, and Ron, and then somebody will try and coordinate and jump on one of those channels to help you out. And then the beauty about this is these videos are going to be available for you 24/7. And if you ever get stuck, you can go back to this community. Somebody will always be there. I see that Rohan been answering some of these questions over the past week. So yeah, you're gonna get a lot of one-on-one support. We're not just gonna do this live and then forget about it. And this way, you can even I highly recommend inviting your other friends who didn't get a chance to watch the first 2 sessions to go through it. And then ask any questions that they have as long as they get stuck doing those exercises and apps that Rohan have been putting this together. So I know Rohan put a lot of work into this, building the curriculum, promoting this content, and setting this up for all of you. So I hope you appreciate it and share it with your friends as well as anybody else in your community. That being said, Rohan, I'm going to hand over things to you.
perfect. Yeah, this is pretty exciting. We came to week 3 of our beginner's guide to Flutter development. We have come quite a long way, actually, if you think about it. Oh yeah, before that, yeah, just for if you want any help for today's session and also for all the sessions in the future, just join this Discord server, and under the Flutter chat, there's a channel called for channel for Flutter. Just tag me there. So then during this live session, I will check questions from there. And also Dalton, he's helping us out, so that's amazing. And if you want some help from me too, you can tag me so I can quickly see it and answer questions there. So we've come a long way. We started off with a hello world just to see what Flutter is all about. What is this Flutter? And we built our hello world app. Then we went on and learned a little bit about the UI. We learned a few UI elements, a few widgets, a few basic widgets, and we built our favorite celebrities app. Today, we're going to be learning more about the code. So, hey, Ron, we built this cool UI, but the favorite celebrities app, it did nothing. It just showed us a list of favorite celebrities. Now, how do I add that functionality? And that's something that we're going to try to learn today. And then a quick preview into what we're going to do next week's dog quotes. That's going to be the week after this. Currency converter, our weather app. We're starting to go into the intermediate level. And again, we'll make everything as easy as possible. So don't get scared about it. And finally, our last 2 weeks, our chat and our face recognition apps. So it's pretty exciting. Love calculator. So you know two people, you want to find out if they're good together, use this app. Oops. I don't know what this. All right. So let me represent again and hopefully you get it to work. All right. So this was basically the GIF that should have loaded of the app that we have built, and I actually have the app loaded. So yeah, that's right. We the GIF loaded now, but I'll show you the actual app. You enter two names and press on the find, if the heart icon, and it tells you how good they are for each other. So this is not something that we have implemented. We're going to query an API on the back end, and we're going to learn on how to query online API. So all about networking is what we're going to learn today. Let's see if Romeo and Juliet are good for each other. 85, yep, got it right. It's basically just some random algorithm that's running on the back, and we're just going to have some fun with it. A few topics we're going to learn today. About code, we're going to learn everything that we can about APIs, because APIs is something that's fundamental on all the following weeks. So we're going to take our time to learn what APIs are. And by the way, this series is even for beginners. So we're even going to cover the absolute basics of it. So everyone will be on the same page. And we're even going to talk about multiple screens today. So let's begin. First, talking to you a little bit about APIs. APIs, application programming interface. Now, think of it as a data source. So yeah, this could be boring. Hey, it's too much text here. I don't want to read. It gets interesting, and when we code, it's going to get extremely interesting. Some fun stuff today. So let's just get through this and let's try to learn this. API, application programming interface. Think of it as a data source. So in the future, we're going to be building our dog quotes app. We're going to be taking data from the dog API. So we don't need to save or store any dog breed information. Everything's stored. We're just going to query it. Whether we don't need to set up our weather stations and actually record the weather. We have an API for it. Today, we're going to be using our Love Calculator API. It's an API built by someone else, and we're just going to query it, and we're going to see how it works. Now, how do we request information from an API? The most bare bones minimum, just like in the most layman's terms, you basically have three main components. These are the main things. One is the host name, which in this case, it is the celeb API. Think of it as there's a data source that is, you can access it through this website, through this URL. There's a data source there. Now, what you want to get from it is usually specified by the path. So you want to get celebrities from the celeb API. Finally, you can add some query parameters. So if you're familiar with structures of a URL, so you might have seen this, or even if you aren't familiar, you might have seen on any website you visited, see this question mark and then some kind of parameters there. That's a query parameter. So it gives you this limit here. And so we're just limiting it to 20 celebrities.
Rohan,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. I
Yeah.
gotta ask you this.
Yes.
This is not a PowerPoint presentation. This is not a Google Slides, correct? Because when you click it, you're interacting with the content. Is this a Flutter app too?
All right. So this is one of the problems of giving too much. Now everyone's going to expect a Flutter app for everything. Well, this is a really nice observation, Malusha. But today we're going to keep it to the basics, and we're just going to have a Google Slides presentation. Um, this is a good thing actually that you brought up, Malusha. Now in the future, I'm going to alternate between this, and we're going to keep it a quiz, and we're going to see if people can catch it. So if people can understand how Flutter apps feel like, they should be able to recognize. So that's a great observation, Malusha, and we're going to implement it next time. So something soon.
Okay, I'm gonna leave it to you.
All right, so this is pretty cool and amazing observation, Malusha. Today is a Google Slides presentation. So yes, so this is our API requests, our host name, path, parameters. This is the basic things, and it usually always will revolve around these three components. Our responses, it's almost always something called JSON, which is JavaScript Object Notation. So if you don't know what that is, not a problem at all. In most layman's terms, it's a group of key value pairs. So this is like a sample response for the weather. So the latitude is 30.45 and so on and so forth. If you notice here, like the current weather, it's given as in Fahrenheit. What's the feeding in Fahrenheit? So this is a response from one weather API. Yes. So, and by the way, this is very interactive. So if there are any questions, put it on the YouTube chats there, and I will answer it instantly. It'll be featured here, and I'll answer it instantly. So don't hesitate. Now we saw how a request looks like, and we also saw how a response looks like. Now that was a general case. Let us try to make it more specific and try to see what are we going to implement today. So this could seem complex, but let's just break it down. This is our host name. So we're going to ask like, hey, this Rapid API, and just think of it as Rapid API as the host. We're going to ask it that give us the percentage. And for what? For our first name and our second name as query parameters. So again, don't let this overwhelm you. We'll get through this in code slowly, so don't worry about that. Our header, this is something new. Our header is not something that we use quite often, but we're going to use it today. In our request, we're even going to pass something called header. And this is something that they require us to pass. So we won't go into too much on what it is. Just think of it that it's needed. And then this, our key, our API key, which is something that should be kept a secret, but I'm revealing it. It's a testing key, so not a problem. But you will generate your own key today. Keep it a secret and combine it with all your subsequent queries. It's so boring. Come on, get on with the app. Yep, we're getting to it. Let's just talk about a few more things and then we get to the app. I know people are usually, all right, this is too many things, but get to the app. A lot of people want to hear the app. Not a problem, we'll get to it. When you make this request here, you get a response, something like this, which is a JSON object. Your first name and last name is basically the first name and last name that you passed. First name and second name is the notation, is the format that they're using. But what we are concerned with is percentage and result. So percentage is how good they are together, right? And result is this message that just like if it's a high percentage, it says like, yep, you're good together, and so on and so forth. If it's a low percentage, you're not good together. So that's our plan. Yeah. Now the interesting part, we're going to go and set up. Let's get our API set up for us to make those requests. So head over to rapidapi.com. I have it loaded here, and let's wait for this. And on the APIs, search for love calculator. So let's just view all results. So you can just see, when you search for an API in this Rapid APIs, by the way, you can think of it as a group of all APIs. So people can offer the APIs here, and we can use it. So we're going to use this one, which is quite popular, love calculator. And the good thing about Rapid API is that it even helps us to test our API before we even use it. So you can click on this test endpoint and you should see what answer it gives. So you can scroll down. Oh, by the way, you might not have this, so we're going to create an account. But actually, let's create an account first so you can follow along. Yep, rapidapi.com, the link that you can see on the screen. And let me actually log out. Oh, log out, and let us sign up for one account. So you can just type in any username and your email and your password and sign up, and it will send you a confirmation email on your email. So it's just accept that, and you should be in. So it's relatively straightforward. Your information, confirmation email, and that's it. You're set up. And then here we'll log in with this testing account. And then once it's done, so I'll give you some time and I'll talk about something, and you can take your time, create the account, and have it set up. If you scroll down, you will see that it's generated this key, which is something that we're going to use in our app. This is a unique identifier that you shouldn't share with anyone, but I'm doing it since it's a testing account, so not a problem. But this is something that you should keep in private. Now, if you scroll down, you can test this. So I can take in like Luke, and sure, we'll just keep Alice. Can't think of a better name right now. My test endpoint, and you should see what answer it gives. So this is just a test. Now we're going to implement this in our app and send this request with these two names and download the response that this API gives us. So if you have noticed, we aren't really building a UI today. The UI is already built for us in our starter code. But what we're going to build is when we click this button, what happens? And that what happens part is going to be built by us. So before we begin, a few more things on a few more setup for today. This is a very famous thing that, or a thing that you're going to use quite often. It's called pub.dev. So this is like a huge collection of Flutter libraries. So just like how Rapid API is a huge collection of APIs, this pub.dev is a huge collection of libraries, of Flutter libraries. And we're going to use this extensively, quite a lot. And you're going to use many libraries from here in your Flutter development, your journey. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to go to this website, pub.dev. So you can go on this website, pub.dev, and search here for a package called HTTP. So in order to make those requests that we saw, we're going to use this package that's quite popular. If you notice, it's quite popular. You can click on it. And this gives us all the documentation that we'll need for implementing this library in our app. So to refresh, we have our API set up. So now we are able to make those requests. We made those requests as a test within Rapid API itself. Now, to make these requests within our app, we are going to implement all the computer net or all the networking code. That's all the timeout and all the protocols. We don't need to handle all that. That's boilerplate code. So to simplify it, there's a very famous library called HTTP. So we're going to use this to make our requests and get our responses. So that's our step for now. So next thing, let us talk a little bit about our a few things. Remember, I just said now we're going to make this request and get the response. Now, there's something that we have to pay close attention to is background threads. So whenever you are doing a long operation, you don't want to do it on the main thread. So here's an example. This line that you see here, think of it as the main thread. A main thread is if you've done something in operating systems, take an operating systems class. If you haven't, not a problem. In layman's terms, a thread is a series of tasks that have to be completed. So whenever the user taps a screen, something has to be done, right, on the UI, and that's what's handled by this main thread. Now, if you do a long task, such as downloading from the internet, sometimes when you download stuff from the internet, it takes a lot of time. So you don't want to do this on the main thread, as if you do it on the main thread, this long task that could take seconds, which sounds like less time, but it's a lot of time, this could freeze your app. And when your app freezes, it's very frustrating. So if your app is if it's published, you could lose users by doing this. So what we're going to do is we're going to run this on a background thread. We're going to run our downloading from the internet on a background thread. So we're going to query that API that we just spoke about on a background thread. How is that accomplished in Flutter? It's accomplished using these two keywords, or this construct, something called async and await. It's too much, Rohan. There's a lot of text here. Get to the app. Hold on there. Let's just get to the theory, and then we'll get onto the app, right? So these two keywords here. First of all, async. Async tells us to run this code here on the background thread. So this http.get, right? We're sending the request and getting the response. We're doing this on a background thread by specifying async. Next is this thing called await. This thing called await, it tells Flutter that take as much time as you need, get the response, and then execute the next line. So to recap, we have set up our API. We can make requests and responses. We have done it within this testing here, within the website itself. Second, we have our package that we're going to use to make those requests within our app, not within the testing environment, but within our app. Finally, the third thing is using this async await. We're going to use this HTTP package within our app. That's our plan. Let's start coding. So the code for today, as always, it's on GitHub. There's the link is in the description, and you can check it out from there. If not, you can head over to GitHub and search for my name. And the users, it's the one with the picture, right? The one with the picture. And click on repositories, and it should be the first one. So this thing that says Flutter Weekly Series, Love Calculator App 3. Now, if you notice here, and the branch, yes, can you repeat the API thing again? Yeah, not a problem. So what we're going to do here is this API from Rapid API. We're going to use this API, and currently we're doing it in the testing environment. We're testing we're sending the request and getting the response through this testing environment. So our first step is we have this API set up. We have the key. This key is obtained when you create an account. So you have created an account. You have the key. Next, we have this HTTP package to make this request within our app, not within the testing environment. So here I can type in any name here. It will work within the testing environment. But to do it within the app, we do this HTTP package. And finally, we are going to use this async await to run this HTTP package within our background thread. So don't worry, throwing too many terms at you. We're going to explain everything step by step in great detail. So don't worry. Cool. So now our code. So yep, all the documentation, whatever. Our code now, it has two steps. Today's is pretty basic, but we're going to implement a lot of APIs, which is crucial for our future weeks. So we need to cover this in great detail. Our first step. So first, let's clone this repository on our local system. You can either fork it. If you don't know what that is, not a problem. Let's click on code and copy this URL here. And head over to Android Studio under File, New, Project from Version Control. And under the URL, paste this URL here. And then click on Clone. And now it will give you this option. Click on No. You don't want it to create an Android Studio a project first. So click on no. And if you have a project set up, it might open it in a new window. So let's just wait for it to, it hasn't opened in a new window. So if it doesn't open it for you, click on file. Your, so looks like there's this problem on my end that I freeze quite a bit. So let me explain again. Whenever it happens, I'll repeat, and hopefully I can fix this problem soon. So what we're going to do is we're going to first file, new, project from version control, paste the URL here, and clone the repository, and then open it by clicking File, Open, and choosing the project that you just cloned, and then click on OK. And then it'll ask you on the same, let's click on New Window, and expand this. And now if you notice, so let us go to screens. So the same setup as always. Under lib, we have screens and widgets. So under screens, now you'll notice there are two screens. So everything, all the UI is implemented for us. So if you see any of these errors, just click on get dependencies and that should solve the problem. And let me stop this app from here. And I will play the app on our emulator here on the side. Yes.
Rohan, one other quick thing. When you're switching from screen to screen, give it a second to render. I think some of them are, like the text is a little blurry. So be patient. We have plenty of time. Cool.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for letting me know. Yes. So if it ever happens, just let me know, and I also will slow down so everyone catches everything. Yeah. So let's wait for the app to load. And now, as always, on the bottom right, you'll see this Git master. There are two steps. So when this completes, we will download our step 1 starter code. And you would notice that the UI is done first. We're only going to implement the code part of it today. So yep. So let's wait for it to start. So we're playing this from the master branch, so that means this is the solution. So you can play with it and test it if you want. But to start it, download step 1 starter code. So check out. Oh yes, I think I went a little quick there. Git, and click on step 1 starter code under remote branches. So you're downloading it from the online repository onto your local system. Then click on checkout. That downloads it to your local system. If you see this option, click on get dependencies. That will just refresh everything. And now you can click on hot reload and you should see no change. However, if you click on this button, nothing should happen. So that's, we haven't implemented it. Now, if you look in the UI, in our home screen.dart, we have a center widget, so scaffold, the usual widgets. But the body of it, the body of our app today, has a center widget. Within center, there's something called names container that just has 3 attributes. This is a custom widget that we have done. It's already implemented for us. So we won't build a UI today. Today, we're only going to focus on the code. So this is done in the starter code for us. But now, let us start to work on our code. So if you see this on tab, it basically says that everything that's there within these 2 curly braces is going to be implemented every time the button is tapped. You want to test this out? You can write here, print here, and give it a hot reload, and observe in your console, every time you click this button, you see here that prints here. So now, whenever this button is clicked, this method is going to be executed. And here is where we're going to download from our online API. So let's start building our code. First step, let us build a URL to query this database, to query this API here. So again, since this is the beginner level 2, so let me explain again. API, data source. We have to pass in these two names and get the response. So if you notice now, I can refresh the page, and so on the right, they will show you what kind of request you have to do to get this information. So just copy this URL that's here. They're telling you, like, if you want to query this API, just copy this URL. So copy, and oh yes, I switched the screen. Let me slow down here. So string URL is equal to, in Dart, by the way, this language is Dart that we're using. We use single quotation marks for strings. Paste this here. Now our second thing is, remember we mentioned we have to pass the query parameters, first name and second name, right? So let me switch again, and I'll give it some time for it to render. Now within the single quotes, we're going to do something special. Put a question mark there and type in fname is equal to, and here you're going to pass in the first name that the user has entered. So to do this, there's a shortcut. Instead of doing a plus name1 dot text dot trim, what you can do is you can copy this within the string itself. So this is a cool function of Dart. What you can do is just type in a dollar sign and then paste this name. Now let me explain what this name is. So without going into specifics, this we're going to implement in the future weeks. The UI is done for us. This name1, it contains whatever is typed within this name1. So we are adding fname to be equal to whatever is typed within name1. Our second parameter here, so we'll put an and sign, and it'll be sname is equal to, this is our second query parameter, is equal to, so dollar sign name2 dot text dot trim. Now you'll notice something is that this becomes green again. You don't want this to become green. You want this whole thing to be treated as a variable. So to do this, again, Dart, what you have to do is put, after the dollar sign, wrap this within the curly braces. Now we notice this isn't green anymore. This is green, this is part of the string. But now if you wrap after the dollar sign with curly braces, now this is treated as a variable. So this is something unique to Dart. You don't need to you don't need to concatenate the strings. You can just place the variable within the string itself, as done here. Perfect. We have done our URL part. We're going to query this API here, get percentage. We have requested the response for these names. Now there's something else that we have to do. You notice here, what they're saying is you have to even pass something called headers. So again, in layman's terms, headers, just think of it as key value pairs that you pass along with the request. So we are requesting the love calculator, the calculation for these two names. You have to even pass these headers. So you can copy this header here, or if you want, yeah, let's do it step by step. Copy this header here. This is our first header. Let me switch the screen and give it some time. So here what we're going to do is we have to create a map. Now this is something that's prevalent in every programming language, or almost the main ones. So in Java you could use something called a hash map. Here it's just directly map, and in the generic part of it, right, what the map stores, like map is a key value pair, is a list of key value pairs. Again, don't get overwhelmed if you haven't heard it before. We're going to cover it today. So just type in here string, comma, string, and name this map headers. And pass this quotation marks. So if you have coded in Python before, you might think of this as a dictionary, which is right. So in Python, dictionaries also have the curly braces. So the same thing in Dart. Dart is, it takes the best parts of every programming language, and it seems to have taken this from Python. Now, single quotes and paste our first uh, header, and for the value, remember it's key value pair, so this is the key, and our value is going to be what they have told here. So copy this. I'll give it some time for the render and head back over to Android Studio. Control V. Paste this here, comma. Let's copy our second line too. You can copy the whole line. I'll copy the individual keys and values. Paste this here. And by the way, keep any questions coming in and we can answer those. And now for the value, let's paste in this key. So you can use this testing key, or else you can even use the key of your own account that you have created. If not, you can just use this key on the screen. We'll also paste it in the comments if you want to use this key. It's fine if you use it for free. So this will be pasted on the YouTube comments soon. So if you can do that, and yep, you can use that key. So now we have constructed our URL, our headers. Now our step 3 says we can make the basically step 8, we can make the request. Now we have everything that we need to make the request on that to that API. API is equal to data source. I just hang in there, don't get confused. API is the data source. Now to make that request within our app, we don't need to implement all the protocols and all the computer networking code. That's all done for us. We're going to use this HTTP package that we used before from pub.dev. So here's how we use packages on pub.dev in our app. So this is something that we'll use many times. So this is a very important skill to know. Copy this, the heading here. It's basically the package name along with the version number, the current version. Control C, and back over to your app, and head over to your pubspec.yaml. Everything like all dependencies or assets that we use is always going to be in pubspec.yaml. So double click on that, scroll down till you find to do 5, and paste this here. Now this is not the exact format. Basically, if you see under the dependencies block or under dependencies in a segment, indentation is, by the way, very important in this YAML files. So paste it in the same line as these Cupertino icons, basically 2 spaces from the left of dependencies, and just copy the same format. You would see this colon sign, and then before the version number, you put this caret sign. That basically says that, like we'll cover it in the future too, basically says that use this it's good practice to have it. So let's just leave it at that. After you paste the package name here, put the colon sign and this caret sign or this exponent sign. Perfect. Run pub.get. So now what's happening is we are telling our app that, hey, I'm going to use this package here. So download version 0.12.2 into our app. So download that. And when this completes, that means now we can use that HTTP package within our app. So we've done 3, 4, and to do 5. So head over to the top now. And if there are any questions, we can answer it now, or just put it in and in the YouTube comment section, and I or someone else will answer it. So no problem. Where it says to do 6, you have to import this HTTP package. If you think that this is all too confusing, don't worry. It'll all make a lot of sense. This is a new concept. Coding, we have built UI so far, all these weeks, so it's something new. So I know people could feel it's weird. Hang in there and ask questions, and we'll be happy to help you out. But don't get stressed or overwhelmed. It'll be fine. So now, import. By the way, autocomplete is really good. Just type in your import and it gives you the autocomplete. Type in here, yep. Make sure running pub.get. Yep, that's very correct, Dalton. Thank you for mentioning in the chat. Make sure you run this pub.get. So you're downloading all the dependencies within your pubspec.yaml. So now, once it's downloaded on a local system, you can use that package within our app. So usually it's there in the documentation, like how you should use it. You can just copy this line out, Control C. Let me switch over the screen, and you can paste it here, or else you can just type HTTP, and it usually gives it in the autocomplete. So use the one that says http.dart and use this as HTTP. Now, if you this keyword as in imports sound familiar? Yep, it's somewhat similar to how you import libraries in Python, right? You do the as or something similar when you have to do it in Python. So Dart takes the best of all programming languages. Dart takes the best of all programming languages. So this is something that I will say all the time. So you will find similarities between Java, between Python in Dart. So that's something new. Now you can use this HTTP, that library, to make a request. So http.get. So .get, it sends a GET request. So if you don't know what a GET request is, not a problem. Just think of it, GET request as just a request. We won't go into what that is. GET request, you are asking that API that, hey, give me some information. Now, Flutter will ask you, like, what API is that? And pass in the URL that you just created. Right? This is the URL that you just created that says the thing on Rapid API. Next, there's this field called headers in this get method. So click on headers, and for headers, pass in this map. Right? So you are making the request at this URL and passing these headers here. Now, this will return a response. So you can catch that response. You can name it as var, as a variable type, and response is equal to HTTP response. Now, this HTTP get is an internet operation. Now remember, internet operations always take time. I mean, you should never expect that they'll be done quickly. So you should put it within an async method. You see this code block? We named it as async. So that, when it sees async for the method, it runs whatever is between the curly braces on the background thread. So you don't have to worry about that. Now this will be run on the background thread. So our app will query, or it will send a request to that API, and the response is stored in this response variable. Now this is something new that you might see here. Hey, why are you not typing something like int or something like that? Basically, var is something that you can even use in Dart. So Dart is a dynamically typed language. So basically, if you want, you can even specify var instead of an actual variable type. Very similar to, yep, if you guessed it, yep, that's right, JavaScript. Just like in JavaScript, you don't need to specify the variable type. You can just type in anything here. Or in Python, where you don't need to specify variable types at all. So you see that you are using some different languages, and everything is incorporated in Dart. Here's the response. Now, to see if everything is working fine, just print the response here. Response dot body. So always. Oh, yep. Pass in an await here. So remember, we said the async and await, right, in our slides. Async and await. So await says that don't worry, Flutter, don't worry. Take as much time as you want to make this request. So I hope you understand these concepts. Ask questions if you have any, because this is the reason I'm going slow and we're covering this in detail is because we want everyone to be on the same page before we go into the next week and subsequent weeks where we use this extensively. So APIs are something that's fundamental to app development. So we're going to use it all the time for a weather app, for a chat app. So let's just get this. So ask your questions, and let's all understand this really well. So now the response, once you get the response, print the response. And that's it. That's it in our first step. So to recap, we have a URL. The URL points to our API. We have some headers here that has a our API key. API key is like a password that tells the API who you are. Next, using that URL and the headers, we use the HTTP package to query that, to send the request to that API. Now this HTTP.get, it returns a response. Save the response in this response variable. Now print the response here. So now you can just click on hot reload and open your console. So this print, by the way, is again very similar to JavaScript, where you print in the console just by typing print. So you can do the same here. So just type in any names like Mark and Martha. And when you click on find if everything is implemented correctly, you should get this line in your response. Oops, so I think this seems to be something wrong. Yeah, so this trim, it's put in parentheses. Also, if you are wondering what is this trim, basically how can you use the async and await method show spinners, loaders? Very good question, Rafael. So what Rafael is referring to spinners and loaders is the you might see this the loading, right? The loading, the circle that shows that loading. So that's something called like spinners or loaders. So technically, when you start this async method, you can set the visibility of that loader, just like we did in our Android series. If you haven't seen that, not a problem. We haven't implemented it here today, so we want to keep it very basic. But basically, in the start of the method, you can do something like visible is equal to true, something like that. So the spinner will be visible to us. Then this await could take like almost 2 seconds or so. So it takes time, right? So the spinner will be visible for 2 seconds, so the user knows that something is happening in the background. And when you are exiting this, you can type in something like visible is equal to false. So when this whatever is within the async, when it's done, then the spinner will disappear and you can present the information to the user. It's a good question. So let can delete this line. Oh, by the way, if you want to delete lines, a shortcut in Android Studio is Control Y. It deletes lines quickly, and on VS Code, it's Control Y for here, and on I put on VS Code. So Control Y. Right. Now let's do a hot reload, and now let's type in a name Mark and and now if you see, you should get something like this, right? That's exactly if you got in this step, it's amazing. So you actually queried that API using this HTTP package, and you got a response. So now currently you're just logging it in your console. But our next step is we're going to talk about how do we parse this response and send the parsed data to our results screen. So when you click find if, it should take you to a new screen that displays that information. So that's the pretty exciting part. So if you couldn't get this to work, not a problem. You can ask your questions here, we can answer it. And if not, you can check the solution code here. And if you go to step to start a code, step 1 is already implemented. So you can follow along from what we're talking now. Perfect. So if there are any questions, we can feature it now and I can check that out. Until we see if there are any questions, head over to your terminal, type in your git add dot, again as the previous sessions, git add dot, enter, git commit -m, and within the parentheses, just type in any message here like completed step 3. This will save. Now if you notice, this green stuff should go away. So green shows that what lines you've added, and it goes away since you have saved the changes onto your local system. So now you can switch over to, you can download step to start a code onto our local system. So under remote branches, step to start a code, check out. And now if you see this, click on get dependencies, and that should fix all problems. And so yeah, you can ignore that. Click on ignore if you want. So now if you see, this is already implemented for us. So perfect. Now our next step is, how do we parse this response and send it to the next screen? So this is the second step. It's a pretty exciting step. Instead of printing in the response, let me go hard reload. If you click find if, you get 0% if you don't pass in any names, right? Now we don't want to log it here in the console. Let's see how we do how we pass it. First, how we parse it, and then how we pass it to the next screen. So our first step is to parse our responses. We have to use a library called dart convert. So import this library. Go to the top. Import this library dart convert. And now under 222, let's start to write the code for that. So remember, you save this response, right? Now we're going to parse this response by calling this method called JSON decode that you get from the Dart convert library. And here you can pass in the body, response.body. So what is response? So this string representation now will become a map. Or if you are familiar with Python, it will become a dictionary. Or if you're familiar with Java, it will become a hash map, right? It's the same thing in all languages. So here you can type in, actually just type in where JSON response. Since you're not too concerned with the type, you can just keep it as where. And now what it does is it decodes a response into like this like a map. And now let's go to our next steps. And this is something new that we're going to do. Is we're going to see how do we start a new screen. So if you remember in Android development, we use something called intents, right? If some of you have followed the series before, we use intents. Now here we're going to use something called this material page route, basically navigators and routes. This is something that you will hear quite often, navigators and routes. So let's see how do we do that. First thing, navigator dot push. There's a method called navigator dot push. So it's like a stack, right? Your screen is basically a stack of screens. Where your screen here is basically a stack of different screens. The stack data structure, right? So you're pushing to that stack. And now what if you push to the stack? Here push something called a material page route. So this is basically, think of it like a container for your app. This is basically just boilerplate code, so don't really stress too much on it. Our first parameter is something called context. First parameter is something called context, and our second parameter is material page route. So now let's see what, yeah. So if you see some warning here, right, that's telling you, if you head over to the warning, builders required. So under the builder, you want to build this results screen, right? So pass in. So I'm going to drop a term here that, don't worry, it's something called anonymous function. So it looks something like this. Right. So basically, if you're familiar with JavaScript, you might see this, right? An anonymous function, an anonymous method. It has no name. And if you hover over builder and press in, or if you just hover over here and press Control P or Control Q. So yes, click on builder and click Control Q. You would notice that it requires a function that takes in a context and returns a widget. So this is something new. Hold on there. Don't get scared. This is a cool trick that you can use, is click on the parameter and click Control Q. It tells you what does this builder widget, what does this builder parameter expect. So it expects a function that takes in a context and returns a widget. So here, take in a context. And now for the return, what widget have to return? If to return results screen. And now it looks very untidy since it's on the same line. So you remember how do we format it? In Android Studio, Control Alt L, and it still looks little untidy. If you want, you can add some commas here. So towards the end, just add some commas whenever you see multiple parentheses together. So add some commas here, and then Control Alt L, and you should get something like this. But I'm just actually going to leave it on one line. I just prefer that. For something as small as this, we can just keep it on one line. So I'll press Control Z, and now if you press Control S, you should see something really cool. When you click on this button, right, this on tap, so this method is executed. You download you send the request, you wait for the request to give a response, you save the response here, you print the response in our console, and now you'll even start a new screen. So if everything goes correct, and now you see this, you have created your second screen. So that's very nice. Oh yes, but now the thing is, it says null and it says error here, even though you have got some proper response here. So here, now we're going to discuss how do you pass that response. So the result screen, if you press Control Space, it requires a percent and a message. This result screen is already implemented for us, so we don't need to worry too much about it. But it takes in two parameters, percent and message. So here, percent. And now you will understand why did we save this JSON response. Why did we decode this response here? All you can do now here is just type in here JSON response. So you are taking this decoded response, right? That's a hash map, or in Python it's a dictionary, and paste in this square brackets and type in here percentage. That's it. Now if you press Control S and go to the back, and now if you oh yes. So basically this is a string, so you can just so I forgot about that. Now I think let's put it on different lines. So Control Alt L and type in int.parse. So just like how you have integer.value of in Java, right? You have int.parse in Dart, and paste this string within this int.parse. Since percent, if you notice here, is an int, but this is a string. So we're converting the string into an int, and now let's see if problem is solved, and we get 0, which is good. And if you type in some names here, any names here, we shouldn't get 0, we should get, looks like let me type in proper names, Luke and Timothy. Yep, you see, we got the percent. But now the message still says error. And that will be stopped when you under the result screen. So this is getting confusing now. Let me probably add a comma here so you all can see clearly now. Yeah, basically under the result screen, there are two parameters, percent, and now second parameter will be message. And for message, again, JSON response. So the response that you decoded, and now extract the result field. Because look at the response here. Our percentage field, right? That saves the percentage, and our result field saves the message. So now we are going to paste this here, and now when you press Control S, let's do it again. Luke, Mary, and now let's find if our app should work. So congratulations if you got this to work. Quick recap what you're doing in this method. It just seems as one method, but it's a beginner's course, so we wanted everyone to come on track with it. And so UI is done for us. We're going to do the code. So under the async means background thread. We save the URL and the headers. Then we use our HTTP package to query that API at that URL. That API gives us a response. We save the response here. We print it in our console. We decode that response and save it in JSON response. So that string now becomes this string. It now becomes a dictionary in Python. If you want to use dictionary, or a hash map if you're familiar with Java. And next, we use this navigator.push. So what we did was, navigator is like it's a stacked data structure of screens. So we pushed a new screen onto that stack, and it's defined by material page route that basically says load result screen. And the result screen, it requires % and message. So if you don't pass it, right, you would, even though you have downloaded the response, you would get error and null. But now if you uncomment these lines out, Control S, or reload basically, you should get 0 and message. What's the difference between anonymous function and a lambda function? That's a good question. So actually there is no difference. An anonymous function is basically a function without a name. A lambda function is a similar construct in Java. So there is no like proper difference there. There is no like big difference there. So lambda function is something like a Java construct, and an anonymous function is something that we would use here. Yeah. Actually, I haven't used lambda functions, but yes, it is the same. For a long time, I haven't used it, but yeah, it's the same. So yes, so that was our app. Are there any questions? Do you have any questions? So this is something important. We took time, and we didn't. Yeah, we focused on the code today. We actually ended quite earlier than we expected. Yeah, which is also what she said. Unfortunately, that was a joke. Yeah, ended quite earlier than expected. I haven't done comedy for a long time, so delivery is not as best. But if there was a live audience, we would get some laugh for that joke. Well, anyway, yeah. So we ended quite early as expected, but we went slow, and I hope you understood, what an API is, and how are we going to query that API to get a response. Because this is something that we're just going to use quite extensively in our future sessions. So hope you understand this. If you have any questions, put it in the chat, and we can figure it out.
So while we wait for some of these questions, Rohan, I noticed that you got some questions on Discord from some of the members. Not necessarily today, but you had a few questions in the past, and you did interact with some of these attendees. And I'm assuming just after having a quick conversation with Dalton too, a lot of them had trouble setting it up, figuring their IDEs. So that's why we were interested to see whether some of them would be open to doing office hours with you, Dalton. And I mean, I know you guys are busy. You have your midterms, like you said. You just wrapped up 3, and we don't want to put too much pressure on that. But then I also noticed a lot of you are helping each other out, because some of those attendees are helping and answering some of the questions they already have. What has been some of those questions outside of this session? Like a lot of the common mistakes that you notice that they end up doing, especially with the new system, new language, and a process like Flutter.
That's actually a really good question. So actually, there are people who have been messaging me, and I didn't get a chance to check it out. But all of you can put your questions in here in Discord, and now that my midterms are well, answer it, very instantly. But some of the things that people had a problem with is setting up the emulator. So there is something that an emulator is something similar to a virtual machine. So you have to enable virtualization on your motherboard, or whatever your motherboard you're using. So you might get an error, something like virtualization not enabled, and it's one of the top things that you would see here. So just you can click on one of the top Stack Overflow questions here, and there's or even some of the videos here, and it tells you. Actually, this is not good. I will paste a good resource for everyone in the chat. But this is a common thing people could have: is enable virtualization on in your BIOS settings. So on your motherboard. The second thing is something that people had a problem like long ago. So if people still have problems, someone has joined, is following the series new under settings. So under Android Studio file settings, under the languages and frameworks, under Flutter. So this Flutter SDK path, people had some problems with it in the beginning. So this is something that people could have a problem with. Is make sure. Let me copy this path down and open it. Explorer.
Now again, this is with regards to the emulator. Is that correct?
So yeah, it's the emulator, but this is with regard to this Flutter SDK, which people had a problem with before. So second thing, I'll just quickly mention it. So when you download it and you paste in the Flutter folder, be sure to go like within this directory and all the way in until you get. Took a minute to get on that one. Yeah, that people have a problem with. So make sure you click go within the hierarchy until you get to this this base folder, the bottom folder that has all these files here. So don't include this in your path. So if you include this in your SDK path here, you get an error. It won't recognize it. It doesn't go within the hierarchy. So make sure to enable this. Yes, but that's some of the two main things that people have a problem with.
So the emulator and then
the SDK, the
SDK. Okay. You also made a quick reference here to Stack Overflow.
Yes.
So let's say, these are things that I was playing around with when I was working with Firebase and Angular. Every time I got stuck, I'd start to find for resources, because if I had an issue, somebody else might have had in the past. For somebody who's new, could you walk them through what are the best? So for example, it's a Sunday, nobody's on the chat, nobody's on Discord, everybody's outside. How would you go about it to do some of these bug fixes?
That's a really good question. So usually, now Flutter, it started out when I think in 2016 or somewhere then. So Flutter is a lot of people have asked many questions. So as you said, Stack Overflow is one of the best things. But there's something that people don't mention quite a lot. Is actually with Flutter, since Flutter is open source, you would notice that the whole Flutter, whatever files that defines Flutter is actually a GitHub repo. So whenever you search for some error here online, I will say Flutter errors, no error is coming to mind, but basically you will get in your search results, you'll get Stack Overflow questions, and you'll also see something like some GitHub answer here. Some Stack Overflow answers, some GitHub answers. Sometimes Stack Overflow isn't the best in case of Flutter, since sometimes people don't ask questions on Stack Overflow, but they ask it here in these issues. You see here over 5,000. So something that early on I did not know about this. I only used to search on Stack Overflow. So I would recommend is search on Google, and then you will get results from Stack Overflow and this GitHub. So sometimes answers are only on GitHub and not on Stack Overflow. So that's a helpful tip. And don't use Stack Overflow, use Google, so you can get even the GitHub results. Also, YouTube is a really helpful resource. So on YouTube, some good people that there are many channels here that you can see, and you're seeing on my
yeah. Okay, you don't want to share audio history there.
Yeah.
So one other thing I want to ask you was the other way I end up learning a lot faster is looking at somebody else's work and then try to reverse engineer it. Now I know you're walking us through it, and you do share. So if you didn't see it, you can see it on the chat. Rohan did share the code to his Git repository. If you're not following him, go visit it. If you're already on the Google Classroom that we set up, I know we only could accommodate 250 of you, but you do have access to all his work there, which you can, yeah, exactly. So exactly the session that you did today, you will find that code. You will be able to play around it. This is another thing I end up doing is like reverse engineering and first setting it up, trying to understand what somebody else did, and then try to work around it, and then question as to why they would have done that. Now, this is amazing because you get to see what Ron done, and then play around with his code. At the same time, you can optimize it the way you see fit. Anything else that you can recommend? Any other applications with this same feature that you talked about today? Now, obviously, the key learnings here was using an API to get some of this data and implement it to the shell that you created last week. So in that case, yeah, maybe we can flip this around and maybe you can turn this into, let's say, a real estate app, or as long as you can find the data. So I highly recommend you fooling around with different sets of data from the API tool that Rohan shared, and then see what you can do with it. And they just don't stick to what Rohan just did today. So I don't know, anything else you want to add, Rohan, there?
Absolutely. So this is a very good point you mentioned. I mean, today we just did a basic this love calculator one. This is very basic, but if you want to see how like some big APIs, you can search for that, and there almost certainly will be an API for that. Also, as Malusha, you mentioned a very good point is experimenting with others' code and seeing how they've done it, and trying to see why they did that. You can actually I don't know if you are interested, but you can see some of the stuff that I've done. So just go on my on this thing here and just type in your Flutter. And you should see many of these. So if you find something interesting like the Flutter presentation, which the week one, if you want to see how that was built, you may not understand everything since we haven't really covered to that level, right? We're just in the basics. But if you want, you can experiment around with these and see some of the code. And if you don't understand, at least you get a feel of how code is built. So some apps are here too, and also check other people out too. So it's just not me, but I have done a few apps that you can check it out if you want. This is an app with Firebase, a chat app which we're going to build.
Oh, you froze again. I'm going to give you a quick second. So yeah, if you haven't done so, make sure to subscribe to Rohan. You just froze there for a second. If you haven't done so, make sure to check out his GitHub. And the other thing I would recommend is it's always better to learn as a group. It's always better to learn as a pair. So if you have other friends who you think should learn this, this would be an awesome. Invite them. We're doing this every week. I know hackathon season is coming up soon. We do support some major league hacking events through our DSC program. So stay tuned for all that as well. One other thing I want to ask you, Rohan, was Dart. How important is it? Is there anything that a developer who's learning Flutter can do to brush up on that?
Yes, really good question. So Dart is the best thing about Dart is you don't actually need to study it. That's so amazing. Since Dart, it takes all concepts from different programming languages. So let's say if there's a web developer, they've used JavaScript, you actually will notice that many JavaScript concepts are used here. So you don't exactly need to learn. That's not really necessary. Yes, it's not really necessary.
And the reason I ask is every time I talk to students, the question is like, which language should I brush up on? And then they keep asking like, is Python good or is it JavaScript good? And I'm like, it depends what you want to do. And obviously Python is heavy when you talk about machine learning and a few other things. And I remember when I was promoting your Android series, that's one of the questions they asked. Is this the Dart-based one? And I was like, yeah, let me check. So I think they're still thinking in the lines of language and where it can go from there. So yeah, any other final thoughts, any other recommendations and that you want to cover today?
Just a final thing is what we're going to cover next week. So this week was like, I don't know, we ended early, but it might be a little basic. Some people might think. But next week we're going to be building a dog quotes app, and so that is we're going to incorporate the UI elements of it. Actually, with the UI elements of it and also the code, and we're going to go pretty in depth with APIs, and so you should try best to understand today's session as far as possible. So we're going to download dog information from one online API, and we're going to also add some amazing UI elements. So stay tuned for next week. I would say it's going to be extremely exciting. I can't stress that enough. It's a yeah.
So give us a parallel to what we're building next week to something that they might be using day to day. Would that be like a restaurant app, like a rating app? Are we gonna filter data based on the regions they're at? Is that the capabilities they're gonna end up learning?
That's a very good question. So there's something called list style that you can or if you can look up list style Flutter. So if you click on it, the first search results, you can see these videos too. But basically, list style is something like this, where you see an image and some data here, and that's basically what you're going to be implementing. Now you might look at this and think that, hey, I've seen this before, and that's true. Many apps, like be it like a chat app, that has like a profile image, right? On WhatsApp, there's a profile image, and then the latest message comes here, and the user's name comes here. So you have seen this actually, all of you have seen this in many different apps, but we're just going to have like a dog name and some dog information here. So we're just using the same constructs. You can see the same UI principles from all the other apps that you have used from in WhatsApp in a day-to-day time uses, but we're just going to change the domain of instead of WhatsApp uses chats, we're going to use dogs. So yes, they've absolutely seen what you're going to cover next week.
I guess that's gonna go into when they start building the chat application and a few others in the future too. Awesome. All right. So by the way, so for the audience who's listening in and tuning in and maybe watching later down the road, so this is the last session for the beginner series because you broke it down into three beginner sessions: how to set it up first, how do you create this quick layout last week, and today how do you put some information in it and maybe do a little bit of hatching, matching, and not necessarily dispatching, but and next week we're going to dive a little bit more into more intermediate content with Rohan.
Absolutely.
So that being said, one last thing I want to share is make sure to join us on our Discord. The link should be listed down there, and I shared it on the chat as well. As you can see, we are discussing all our series that's going forward. So here, I know you all sending questions in, and Dalton is still there in lobby one, waiting for some of you to come and ask any questions. If you have anybody who's in stage one, welcome to join as well. So also on the 24th, we're gonna kickstart our Cloud Study Jam again. And this is going to be our second. So we only did the fundamentals, and now we're going to kickstart with the other session on the 24th. Is going to be the infrastructure one. The reason we want to cover this is we want to give you a foundation of what cloud looks like before you diving into more interesting topics like machine learning. So when Rohan goes to his sixth or seventh session, we're gonna create a backend. We're going to start doing some data processing. Are we ever going to touch things like ML kit? Are they going to learn how to use? Just drop us some knowledge. Give us a hint, please.
Yes, absolutely. So our last app, which is going to be to wrap up the series, we are going to be building this using Firebase's ML kit. And if you want to see on what how the app would look like, actually I will load it on guest mode. That's much more better. You can actually search here for Flutter ML kit, and if you search here, you would see some of this video by the official Flutter team, and now you can check the video out just to get an idea of what type of machine learning are we going to do in our app, and also the study jams. Some of the concepts that are there, we are going to be in some way incorporating it in our series too, like the backend code and backend functionality. In some way, shape, or form, we're going to implement it too.
So it's always good if you have the time, if you can commit the time. Plus, these videos are available. You can access it anytime you want. The only thing with the Cloud Study Jams are you might need a code. Let us know. We'll try to coordinate it in a way that you can access it on an ongoing basis. And then the interesting thing about things like I guess ML kit, you can do the processing on the phone without talking to the cloud. And then once you get things processed, you can communicate it back with the cloud. So there's so many things you can do, especially if you're building something during a hackathon. This is like 2-3 lines of code to implement it, and you probably have once you have enough knowledge using Flutter in combination with Firebase. So super excited. Any last words? Anything else you want to add to all this, Rohan, before we wrap up today?
Yes, one last thing is send a question on Discord. I will answer them instantly now. My midterms are over, so I will be very responsive.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Once again, Rohan, really appreciate the time. You put a lot of work into this. Even the Flutter team itself is very impressed with the quality of this session. So that's why they keep retweeting all our promo content, and I'll make sure to loop them in with the upcoming events as well. We're trying to get few members from the Flutter team. I know Nilay joined us in the first session to help us kickstart the series. I think if you have time, if you can create some time, we'll be more than happy to bring some of those Googlers in, and you'll get to interview with them as to why, and you might be able to add some suggestions so they can go back and implement those changes as they see fit. So that being said, we want to wrap this session up. Thank you so much for tuning in. Drop us make sure to join us on Discord. Drop us a line. Make sure to sign up for the next session. If you have friends who you think should learn, who are debating whether they should build applications on Android versus iOS, tell them to come and learn Flutter with us, so they can build it for both platforms going forward. So that being said, have a great night, and see you next week.
Perfect. See you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Get ready for a cloud-first workplace. Jumpstart your career by signing up for a Google Cloud hands-on learning experience. Companies around the world are moving to the cloud. This is a unique opportunity to gain new skills and professional credentials. If you want to discover a career, scale your startup, or perform groundbreaking research that will change the world, this is the event for you.